I'll call the meeting to order. The Zoning Board of Appeals meeting of Bloomfield Township for September the 13th, 2022. First, I'd like to take attendance.
So noted.
And then I'd ask the board members to give a motion regarding approval of the minutes from the Board of Appeals meeting of August 9th, 2022.
So moved. Support.
So I have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. As a brief introduction, the Zoning Board of Appeals is a 7-member quasi-judicial body appointed by the Bloomfield Township Board of Trustees per the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. Matters pending before the Zoning Board of Appeals are decided on a case-by-case basis. Any appeal of a decision made by the Zoning Board of Appeals is subject to circuit court review. Each case will be called separately in the order shown on tonight's agenda. There will be an opportunity for public comment at one point during each case. All persons wishing to comment will be asked to provide their name and address at the podium. Address your comments to the board and not the applicant or other members of the public. Given the number of appeals tonight, please make your comments brief. Comments by the Neighborhood Association will be considered as part of the factual information presented to the board, but they are not the determining factor for approval or denial. Please confine comments to the specific request before the board. For a request to be successful, an affirmative vote of at least 4 members present is required. We hope this provides a better understanding of what you can expect at tonight's meeting. Thank you. We'll now call the first case. So it's agenda item 1T, 7141 Franklin Road.
Brian, were you going to address those two?
Oh, I'm sorry. There are 2 agenda items that are postponed this evening, and we will not hear them. Item number 1, 3930 Devon Gables, and item number 10, 4465 Park Lane Court. So if you're here for either of those items, we will not be considering them tonight. So if you could state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Terry Nosen, 30,600 Northwestern, Suite 400, Farmington Hills. The principal of Franklin Woods Associates, LLC.
So Mr. Nosing, you had a very well-developed presentation. The last time you were here in June, you have the same panel here, so I thought maybe we could, if you could do maybe 3 things for us, because I'm sure you got a presentation here. If you could give us the specific request that you're asking for in terms of what the ordinance requires in terms of the trees and what you're proposing. If you can tell us then what happened since the last meeting, because there were 3 things that we asked you to do. You have a very nice summary of your materials, and then if you want to add any additional comments about things that you think would support your requests that are different from what we heard before, that would be great.
Thank you. The specific request is the same request contained in the original filing. That is, we've prepared a conceptual master landscape plan that we feel provides visual buffering to the existing properties to both the east and the south of our property and along the Franklin Road frontage of the property. That we would be required to provide replacement trees in the approximate types, quantities, and locations to provide this visual buffering as shown on our conceptual master landscape plan, and that the agreed replacement trees would be installed or bonded at the time of final plat approval. That's our request. I might point out that subsequent to, following into your next piece, that subsequent to the meeting, one of the things we were asked to do was to engage with the neighbors, and that's primarily the immediate adjacent property owners, and we have done that through several meetings and phone calls, emails, et cetera, and that resulted in a slightly changed proposed landscape plan. In that plan, there were approximately another 35 inches or so of replacement trees that were shown. It went up from 1250 to 1285 and a fraction. And not so much because it was felt they were needed by some of the neighbors, and also because we did a major change in terms of protecting the southeast corner of the property from perceived water runoff that's been a problem for those property owners, even with the property in its natural state. And what we did is on this new plan, with cooperation of our engineers and the landscape architect, we developed a berm in the southeast corner and added another, what we call infiltration basin, that would take the water from the whole corner there and be able to hold two 100-year back-to-back storms, which is a very, it's higher than what a detention basin would hold. That only does one 100-year storm. So it's not shown on that picture. I think the new plan should be, it's in there someplace. There it is with the berm in that.
Yeah, could you show the berm?
In that corner right
Okay.
there. And there's one where we highlighted with some, we put a little color, we put blue, because one of the issues that we were talking about was drainage and how these infiltration basins work instead of a large detention basin. But there's a little drainage facility that we're adding here, and we're channeling the water so that it makes sure it doesn't, the natural flow is right through these properties right here. So we're channeling it. The berm is designed to hold it. We haven't taken that through Hubble-Roth and the township's engineering department yet, but our professional engineers did engineer it, and we're confident that we'll be able to work through those. It's a minor change and improvement to, but it's major in its effect, we believe. So we increased the inches by about 35 with this plan. We also, in discussions with our neighbors, they wanted to be assured, the ordinance calls for a 1-year warranty for the landscape plantings. And we put in a mechanism whereby the homeowners association will warrant that the trees will be 2-year warranty, and any trees that die within the 2 years will be replaced like kind, as so we can't, if they happen to die, they can't just be cut down and abandoned. So we're going out 2 years on that. That's part of our deed restrictions, which we submitted. And then lastly, we
And could you explain what the deed restrictions require? I think that'd be helpful for the
sure.
number of inches per lot.
Oh, so, and then that was the next piece,
Okay.
is that we also added to the deed restrictions, although the draft that's in your packet did not have the correct paragraph 5.13 in it. I do have it with me. 5.13 says that upon completion of a residential dwelling, the owner will finish the lot, it'll be sodded and suitably landscaped, and it defines suitably landscaped to include the installation of a minimum of 15 caliper inches of nursery quality trees, either 3-inch or greater deciduous or evergreens of 8 feet or higher, which is the ordinance standard for a replacement tree. So that's added into our deed restrictions. that would net another 135 inches, caliper inches of replacements on the property, taking us to just under 54% of what the ordinary replacements would be under the calculated replacements under the ordinance. That's pretty much the summary. Our discussions with the neighbors are ongoing in terms of what we will ultimately do. Some of them have some trees on their property that are close to the property line that are not so great and have asked us to remove them, which we've assured them we will at our expense. Some of them have trees that they feel they want to take the chance and see if they make it, even though our activities are close to their property line. We're going to work through those things with them. We've made that commitment in various written communications with them. Those will obviously be an additional expense to us, but we're more than happy to accommodate those needs because they've been good partners in discussing with us. And really what it came down to is nobody, I think, had any huge desire to see the full replacement amount of trees populated onto this property, but we're more concerned about the drainage issues and the ability to have good screening, which we're providing with larger than the minimum trees. 4 to 4.5 inch deciduous trees, 14-foot evergreen trees are what's called for on the plan. One other thing, last time we had our engineer and our environmental consultant here. I don't think there's really much of anything, especially with the additional information you got for them. But in case necessary, we did invite our arborist here, Kay, and she's looked at a couple issues. We had her survey the neighborhood, the area, to look for potential oak wilt on our property and off of our property in a pretty substantial radius. And she found none existent at this point in time. I know it's been a concern expressed by some people is how we'll protect it. And she also provided, in addition to Michael Duell, on behalf of the township, some guidance in terms of how to handle the red oaks as we do these removals so that we have the best shot at not promoting any oak wilt with this project. So she's here if you have questions for her.
Well, you responded, I think, quite thoroughly to our request to give us additional information about the process that was going to be used to remove the arsenic. Could you maybe explain how you came to the decision that that really was the best course of action to remove everything rather than, perhaps at least some of it? Because I think a lot of that was explained in the permitting materials, your explanation of, what would be required in terms of deed restrictions, a due care plan, and perhaps some risk of migration to any of the utilities that you'd be putting in.
Yeah, well, this plan went through a number of iterations over the years that we've been involved in it. At one point, we were going to leave a substantial amount of the contaminated soils on the property when we were pursuing a higher density multifamily type environment. We were going to make a park area and leave some of this material in the park. But the bottom line is the environmental, our phase 1 environmental, which you have copies of, identified this arsenic as a environmental condition. The best recommendation of our environmental consultant was that if you want homeowners who can freely mortgage their property, live safely on their property, and even for adjacent neighbors, it's best to remove the condition rather than keep it in place. And that was something, as we went through the 9-lot plat, where all of this property is will be owned by 9 separate owners, the only exception being the wetland park, which has no arsenic in it, and will be owned by the homeowners association. It was determined that it was in everybody's best interest to have this property meet residential standards for arsenic level, and that we be below those residential standards that are promulgated by EGLE, which is the State Department of Environment. And so that was taken up by Township's engineering department very early on, and Hubble Roth, the consulting engineers, and we were pretty much led down that path. But I think it was the right path, because we really prefer to have land that meets the residential, is at or below the residential standards for this chemical, which only resides in the upper portions of the soil and the topsoil.
Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to add? So because I'm sure we're going to have some public comment, you'll probably have some response to that. So if there's nothing else that you'd like to add, you're certainly going to be coming back up. And is there anyone else who would like to ask questions at this point? Is there anything else that you'd like to say, or would you?
I think so.
Your counsel? Your materials were very thorough.
Yeah. My counsel, Jerry Pesic, his letter to the township is a good, also, summary of where we are and the efforts we've made with regard to providing documentation, and he can answer as to any of the conclusions and facts and opinions he's got in his letter. So.
Yeah, and I think his letter set out very succinctly the standard in the FP development versus Canton case. We've spent quite a bit of time with our counsel discussing that, the standards. The board sort of understands what that case requires as well. So that was helpful.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like then to open the public hearing for this item. Are there people here that would like to speak on this item? If you could state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Charlton Birch, and I reside at 6966 Holiday Drive, where I've lived for about 40 years. And I share a 188-foot common line with the platted acreage, and I oppose the petition seeking relief from the township tree ordinances. My major concerns are in a letter that's in the presentation packet dated September 8th. However, I wanted to add a couple of points that are additional concerns. In May 2020, Mr. Nosen had the soil retested for toxins along the north-south line. This was done at approximately 4 feet and 10-foot intervals from that line. He later indicated to me that the shared line on his property was below actionable limits as defined by the state, out to 10 feet. I've asked him repeatedly for verification of that without response. My concern is that if this is the case, it begs the question whether 20 feet out may well be non-actionable. But in either case, it does not seem unreasonable that the results of the analysis should be shared with the township, the analysis done in May of 2020, and with the joining homeowners. And as my letter states, I have real continuing concerns about the clear cutting of the property and the planting of nursery stock very close to my existing tree line, where I have about 30 very large mature trees on my property within a few feet of the line, and 3 to 4 trees which are shared between the acreage and my property appear to be very close or on the line. I'm concerned about the viability and health of my trees, and even the prospect of them becoming hazardous. Right now, they are woodlot trees, they are healthy, and I am concerned about the severing of roots. Mr. Noson's arborist and my own have indicated that the feeder roots for my trees go out at least 20 feet onto his property. And I'm concerned about the remediation process that will go down up to 18 inches if there is toxins present. But also I'm concerned about the planting of nursery stock where the root balls may as well damage these tree roots and cause my own trees to fail or to certainly be less viable. I read in Mr. Noson's arborist's report that oak wilt disease is a real problem in Oakland County and even the township. And I'm worried that out-of-season limbing and felling of these trees could well spread oak wilt disease not only to my trees, but those in the entire complex along that line, of which there are many, many red and white oaks. So I see that as a risk to the entire association complex that we ought to consider. I wonder if it would be appropriate to have Charles, the township arborist, address these specific matters. My reading of Michael Dull's landscaping review seemed limited to the landscaping plan itself rather than these contingencies, and certainly didn't touch on potential adverse effects of an out-of-season cut or felling of these trees. And that's the sum and substance of what my concerns are, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. You could give us your name and address?
My name is Linda Bann. My husband John and I live at 4548 Stony River Drive, and we share at least 275 feet along the southeast corner. We have worked with Mr. Noson. Mr. Noson, after the last meeting, spent time talking to the neighbors. Both of his project managers and assistants spent time to explain what they were doing and to get an idea of what our concerns are. Mr. Noson has shared several revised blueprints. The most recent one I received at the end of last week, so have not had a huge amount of time to digest it. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that I said in the June meeting and in other correspondence that we've had with the township over the last 2 years. The big concern is this. The reason for these infiltration ponds is because so many of the trees are going to be removed. And I'm at the bottom end of where all of that water is going to come. I don't know. I have not had time to have our own folks take a look at those infiltration basins. I can show you pictures of what my property looks like today. Our property has been very carefully swaled and configured to go ahead and prevent, water, because the Pickering Farm, the old Pickering Farm, is 20 feet higher than we are. We are 20 feet higher than our neighbor, and then it goes down from there, because Stony River does something, it doesn't have
There's quite a slope there, yeah.
There's a huge slope, not only from the proposed Franklin Woods to our property, but from our property all the way down.
Yep.
Okay. So this is what this looks like today. Apologize for the grass because it's been very dry. But all of that tree will disappear. It is going to look completely denuded by the time things are done. And the infiltration ponds may work, they may take care of things, but if they don't, those of us who live below that and down are the ones who are going to suffer. We are the ones who are risking serious damage to our property. The folks who live behind us also have the same issue. And we know that there are others who live further down Stony River Drive that have huge issues with water, where their sump pumps run 24 hours a day. We have 3 neighbors who have 2 sump pumps to go ahead and control the water. So, again, we don't dispute and we support Mr. Noson's right to go ahead and develop that property. And frankly, it'll help raise the property values for where we are. But there have been so many changes over time. And again, the drawings that I was sent said, okay, this is what we plan to do, and it'll go back through engineering. Our fear is once he gets an approval to go ahead, then it just doesn't matter, because then he does not have a lot of accountability. And then we, as existing homeowners, are going to be left holding the bag. And we do not want to get into a situation where it gets into litigation. Frankly, we want to be good neighbors. We want to work with Mr. Noson. But frankly, this is a huge issue. And if there was a way to retain some of the trees, if there was a way to prevent that, because removing 11 acres, and particularly around the perimeter, that's what's holding a lot of things there. This neighborhood has grown up since the 40s and the 50s, so that's what's different at this point than doing new development. So thank you. If you need anything, please ask.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this item? All right, then I'll close the public hearing and ask the applicant to come back and respond to the comments from the public. See if there's any further questions from the board.
I appreciate the people who spoke on behalf of their property. And as Ms. Spann indicated, we've had substantial discussions. I think that we have to keep the perspective that this is not a hearing about whether we're going forward with development of this project or not. We have all of our approvals. This is a hearing regarding whether we have shown practical difficulty in order to merit having consideration with regard to the quantity of replacement trees. But in that context, we've, on our own, allowed this to become a vehicle to try and have better communications with our neighbors and to accommodate their concerns and address their concerns, which I believe we've done. The property and our engineer testified to this before this group last time, but I'll reiterate what the summary of what he told me, which is when the homes and stormwater management system that we've designed are finished, this property will have decreased runoff to the south, not the same runoff, not increased runoff. And then the provision of this berm and the infiltration for the berm is just an extra belt and suspenders insurance to address that. But that is not the subject of this this meeting nor this body, but I'm sensitive to it. And I understand when she says that once he gets approval, he'll have no accountability. I don't believe that to be true. We've put these agreements in writing. They are personal agreements between two property owners. They're very much enforceable, and I've, in my long career, avoided litigation assiduously. And I always try and do right by my neighbors, and I try to honor my agreements, which brings me to Mr. Birch, who we've just agreed to disagree. I understand his concerns, but I think his view of what my responsibilities are to a neighbor is misplaced. He has to take care of his own trees. The 10 feet that showed up being arsenic-free, or at least below residential levels along his property, gives us a 10-foot buffer. But what you call the roots that are 20 feet onto our property from his trees is called trespassing in the law. And so he has vegetation, roots, and probably limbs in the upper part that are trespassing. And we're not there to do anything vindictive. I don't intend to damage his roots or his overhanging limbs, but we have to do what we have to do. We will do it in as careful a way as possible. And in the case of Mr. Birch's property, unlike our other homeowners, we're able to stay 10 feet away from the line with our tree removal and excavation work, which is a good thing for him. And I guess it's lucky for both of us that, at least in his case, we found the arsenic lacking. But everything's been tested, and more testing isn't going to reveal any better results of any substance. And then Kay can probably address, if you'd like, if you're really interested in hearing it, the fact that even a tree that's on the property line, so there's 10 feet of roots that could be affected. And I don't mind at all making the, not putting nursery stock in that 10-foot area. If he doesn't want it there, we'll be happy to do that. We have to provide some screening for our homes to the adjacent property owners, just as they want and like screening from their homes to us. So that's pretty much it. I would hope we could focus on the practical difficulty of us doing this task. And it's not 11 acres. There's probably about actually 6 to 7 acres of real area where the trees have to be fully removed and the arsenic soils have to be removed off-site. The whole wetlands area on the north is untouched, and much of what we call the homestead, where the barn, the house, the garage, and other outbuildings also has no arsenic, other than a couple spots that we have to do some spot remediation, according to McDowell. So I would love to leave the trees along the property line on the hill by Mrs. Ban intact, but the owners of Lot 1 are going to own that arsenic soil if I left it there. And it just doesn't, it could give them problems in terms of future financing on their property, et cetera. So we think it's best to do the removals, and we will try and provide at our expense additional screening in her case to try and compensate for the big tree that's on our property, which we have to take down. But all of that, is, in terms of accountability, we've got a pretty decent reputation here in the township doing what we say we do. We will put things in writing, and nobody's ever had to make a lot of loud noises to get us to
Well, and
fulfill our
certainly,
responsibilities.
we can impose conditions on our variance request. So, does anybody on the board have questions?
Yeah, I just have a question. So I'm sensitive to the soil contamination and the fact that you have to remove these, this large number of trees. But I guess I'm still having a hard time understanding why you can't just add more trees, plant more trees.
It's not a matter of why we can't. I guess the practical difficulty, as I perceive it, and maybe Jerome could speak better to it, isn't that I can't possibly put the trees back on the property. The practical difficulty is the fact that we have this arsenic to remove. We have a condition there that needs to be remedied, and therefore, and it's costly, and therefore we're asking for a balancing test for the township to have some amount of sympathy for us to say that because of that, we've got a competent, appropriate plan for reforesting, even without hitting the calculated numbers that the ordinance provides. But maybe Jerome can better express it than I.
Well, I think what's important, Jerry Pesic, 380 North Old Woodward, Birmingham, Michigan. I think what's important to focus on is we have a plan. The remediation was recommended by Mr. Noson's engineers, McDowell & Associates. It was reviewed in detail and endorsed by Hubble, Roth & Clark, Township's consulting engineers. It is supported by the Township Engineering Department. The approval of the plan was the plan we have here, approved by both the Planning Board and, of course, the Township Commission.
I guess, can I just stop you there?
Sure.
Because I'm part of the Board of Trustees that approved this, and the considerations there are different than the considerations that we're dealing with here. So just because it's approved by the Board of Trustees, that has nothing to do with the trees.
I appreciate that, but your question was, why can't more trees be planted?
Sure.
Okay, the plan as it currently exists is approved by all those folks and recommended by all those folks. We're talking about a hardship here that's created by the necessity to remove the arsenic, which again is recommended by all of the engineers that have looked at this thing. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of how much money is going to be paid into the fund. There's not going to be any additional trees planted beyond those which Mr. Noson has talked about this morning. The tremendous hardship financially created, which I outlined in detail in my letter dated August 4th, 2022, to the Planning Department, and I know it's applied to you folks. So the township has to look at it from the perspective, what benefit is the township going to achieve versus the detriment or hardship on the property owner? In this case, it's only about money. Your question was, why can't more trees be planted? It's not recommended that more trees be planted, and at the end of the day, the plan is approved, is going to be implemented.
Well, I guess what I would say to that is, in theory, this board could recommend that more trees be planted.
I don't necessarily follow that, and I guess it's up to your council to advise you on that. But at the end of the day, it's a determination of whether or not the variance is going to be granted. It's not a recommendation to change the plan as I see it, under what this board's obligations and duties are.
So I think the standard that was set forth in the case required a balancing. So there's a balancing of the legitimate interest of the municipality in natural resource preservation, and that has to be balanced against the degree of exactions or the degree of trees that have to be replaced. That has to be roughly proportional to the impact of the project. So I look at the impact of this project as providing a benefit to the community in that the arsenic is being removed. And according to materials submitted, that's a costly benefit to achieve. That cost, based on everything I read, and I saw the letter from Hubble, Roth & Clark really approving the plan to remove the arsenic, because it has to go to a site that's approved. There's a cost per pound in order to take arsenic-filled soil to a site, and so the cost to remediate the site in order to develop it for a use that's permitted by our zoning ordinance, just for that part, is $400,000 to $500,000. In addition to that, the cost of the trees in order to replace, and he's now moved from approximately 46% of what the ordinance required to just under 55% with the berm and with the deed restriction. So there's been movement in that direction. I think we have to take both those benefits into account. The benefit of not having the arsenic in the soil, I think it was a reasonable decision to say it needs to all come out, because if it's ever going to be used as residential, you don't want any arsenic in the soil. There is some chance of migration of groundwater. So that's a benefit to Bloomfield Township, in addition to the trees that would be planted. And at least it's been my experience that even with the deed restrictions, that people that live in homes that cost about in this price range are probably going to plant even more of that. So I think in balancing those things as required by the Canton case, in my opinion, I think what we have in front of us is a reasonable proposal.
And the Canton case itself indicates that what the board's responsibility is to balance the benefits that it's receiving as a result of the project with the necessary extraction, so-called extractions from the property owner. In this case, and I think you hit it right on the head, Mr. Henry, the benefit is this removal of this arsenic, which without this development was never going to happen, and which is endorsed by all of the engineers as well as the engineering department. And the question is, how much of an extraction is justified from the property owner?
Well, in the case, it just has to be roughly proportional. So that's up to us. This isn't, as I've talked with people individually, isn't something that we are regularly faced with.
To
So
close
we're,
the loop, we believe that what we've proposed is roughly proportional to the benefit and the extraction.
right, so now it's up to us to decide that. So I think we're familiar with the standard, so does,
Yes.
Can I just?
Yeah, very familiar with the standard, and as an attorney myself, I know that every case is very fact-dependent, and to the chair's point about it being a benefit to the township to have all of this removed, I think the argument on the other side could be made that right now, we don't need to be benefited. If the soil is not disturbed, it's not causing any harm to the township as it stands today, and so because now we're choosing to disturb it, well, then, yes, of course, there's a benefit because we have to remove it, because who's going to live on a house that's built on soil with arsenic in it? So, again, that balancing has to take place, and
Can I jump in?
I'll just, I'll leave it at that.
I would just comment that, everybody's talking about the Canton case, but our ordinance also requires this balancing test. And in response to your comment, I would caution you that if you go by the standard of not disturbing any of the soil, are you then precluding some type of use? I mean, there needs to be a balance not only with the value and benefit of the township, but also of the property interest in the owner's
Absolutely.
ability to develop. So I do believe the effort's been made and to strike a balance between the interests of the developer, but also in protecting the intent of the ordinance, and striking a balance in the benefits inherent in the ordinance. So that's the factors you need to weigh. I just wanted to emphasize that the term
the ordinance itself has that balancing required.
Right,
as
and
well.
I just wanted to emphasize the term practical difficulties used. I just want to make sure everybody's firmly, this is a different practical difficulty than you're typically using. This is the one specified in the tree ordinance in section 13.
If I might, there's another benefit that I think is left off the table here to the township and to the adjacent property owners. Michigan mandates something called a seller's disclosure upon the sale of property and requires homeowners to disclose what they know or have a reasonable right to know about their property. And I would argue that all of these adjacent homeowners, up until this discussion about developing the land, could have claimed not knowing, but that no longer is the case. And a purchaser of any of the properties adjacent to this site would now have to disclose that there is arsenic on an adjoining parcel when they put their home up for sale. You can't avoid that. That is state law. And I would also suggest that if the opportunity to remove that arsenic were in place, then you could argue that there is not arsenic on adjoining soil. That makes a huge difference in property value. I only sold houses for 40 years, most of it in this community. And I can assure you that when we went up to other communities where arsenic was present, people literally said, I don't want to buy there. So 50 years ago, this wasn't a problem. 50 years ago, we didn't have color TV. Well, no, you know what? We did have color TV. I remember having one. So that was 70 years ago, we didn't have color TV. But the reality is the times have changed. The consumer is far better educated. And the fact that this hearing is taking place now makes every property owner adjacent to this project required to disclose that if this arsenic is not removed, that it is there.
Well, there's just a couple other things that I'm just thinking about when I was just listening about the replacement of the trees. And for one, well, the developer, congratulations for, or at least kudos for increasing the replacement from, I think it was the 45 to almost 55%. But when I think about it, once, you have homeowners there, I would imagine, just like I just put 16 new trees on my property, just to, for aesthetics as well as privacy and screening and all of those types of things. And so if you think about it, with all the parcels that you have there, with 55% replacement, and then once homeowners get there and then they actually add theirs, we could be easily up to, maybe 75, 80% once you get all of those occupied. So I'm just trying to think that through, and if anyone thinks my thinking is
No, this board requires screening when accessory structures go up, so we could actually be requiring additional screening on top of what's already been proposed, so.
If somebody wants to build a house, they want to put on a deck, they want to put on a pergola, they want to,
Oh, yeah,
whatever they want to do, we've got, we've done the arborvitae business.
yeah.
exactly. So when we think
A
about
good
it,
deed, yeah.
at the end of the day, you may be looking at a significant replacement once that occurs.
I have a comment. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. I can't ignore the fact that one of the neighbors here mentioned water runoff, and although we're not discussing that water containment component here, the trees and the removal of them can affect that. And I quickly heard somebody mention, I think it was you, sir, that it's a 100-year containment system and that the water runoff will be less than what it currently is. That's correct, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
We're not, the engineer has to do all the calculations. We're not allowed to increase runoff in any circumstances. And what we're,
To any
without
of the surrounding
the
neighbors.
berm and the extra infiltration basin that we're proposing, it's still a net less runoff once the site's fully developed than it is today. And the engineer tells me that they do not have any, now the site has to be covered so we don't have erosion with vegetation, but trees themselves, according to the engineer, don't factor in to their calculations for runoff. In other words, they're not a benefit or a detriment. The water still runs with the trees there.
But you'll have a berm and you'll have things like that and contain it. All right, thanks for the explanation.
So is there any further discussion? Ready for a motion? Any other questions? I think we've gotten a lot of information about this project and gotten guidance on the standard and the balancing, benefits of the community.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have to make any more the rest of the night, okay? Mr. Chairman, with regard to the proposal before us at 7141 Franklin Road, I move pursuant to Section 42-5.14 and 42-7.6 of the Bloomfield Township zoning ordinances to approve the variance for the tree replacement requirements of the township's tree ordinance preservation ordinance to allow for the development of a new platted subdivision, Franklin Woods, and to allow the applicant to replace approximately 45% of the trees to be removed from the subject property with 1,250 inches of new trees as proposed by the applicant, and the applicant will place a deed restriction requiring each new homeowner to plant an additional 15 inches of trees for a total replacement of 1,385, with the applicant providing a warranty for the new replacement trees for 2 years because the applicant has demonstrated practical difficulty for the following reasons. Granting the variance would be in compliance with the intent of and purpose of the article, as it would be taking into consideration existing law and allowing the applicant to make reasonable use of their property, but would still preserve important resources by allowing soil remediation on the site and providing adequate tree replacement. The character and community value of the protected trees affected as preserved and protected, as the applicant will be planting trees of the property on the property pursuant to its submitted conceptual master plan, which will provide visual buffering to the existing properties to the east and south of the applicant's property and along Franklin Road frontage of the applicant's property, and the applicant will provide replacement trees in the approximate types, quantities, and locations to provide visual buffering as shown on the conceptual master landscape plan, which will result in the applicant replacing, again, approximately 45% of the removed trees with 1,250 inches of new trees, and the applicant will also place a deed restriction requiring each homeowner to plant an additional 15 inches of trees for a total replacement of 1,385 inches on the property. Finally, the existing unique circumstances on the applicant's property, which make compliance with the article physically impossible inasmuch as there is the presence of contaminated soil on the property, including arsenic contamination, and the applicant has to remove the contaminated soils on the property in order to remediate the property and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the entire township, including its surrounding neighbors, future homeowners, and the subject property, and those properties obviously in the area of the subject property, and said removal of the contaminated soil requires that the majority of the subject property be cleared of existing vegetation and trees, and the applicant's proposed plan to clean up the contamination on the site and its tree replacement plan, together with the future homeowners' additional plantings, is more than roughly proportional to the interest of the township in preserving the natural resources of the community. If this motion is approved, all necessary permits must be made. Application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to construction.
I have a quick comment.
Wait a minute, he made a motion. Are you amending it, or
I
you?
am amending it.
Okay.
We got to wait for it to be seconded to
Yeah.
amend it.
Oh, sorry if I jumped too quickly. I think there's clarification in the numbers. In our packet
Is there a
here,
second?
so that would be an amendment, right?
Well, there needs to be a second to be,
Okay, well, I'll wait for
a
someone to
motion
second.
needs to be seconded before
Okay,
it
so
can
a
be
motion and a
amended.
second.
I second.
Okay.
Now it can be amended.
Okay.
In discussion.
Item number 3 in our packet here in the paper, which is approximately like, I want to say about halfway through. The last sentence says, the second is a provision that will require all lot owners to provide a minimum of 15 caliper inches of 3-inch or larger trees on each lot. And then it adds the replacements on site to be 1,430, not 1,385. So which is it? That's just my question, I guess.
You need
to clarify.
clarification. The property owner, or the developer needs to address that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It just seems to be a little discrepancy, and I want to make sure that we at least start off on the right foot.
Yeah, it's-
And you had mentioned that there might be a discrepancy in the
There
update
is
in the
there
numbers.
is a slight discrepancy, and I can go over that, those
Okay.
numbers right now if you like. The discrepancy being more trees, not less.
Right.
That's the good news.
I just want to make sure we make the motion
So, yeah,
correctly.
so the new plan with the berm, when the landscape
I
architect.
think the
did-
difference is the berm, that's what I,
Yeah,
it's the
came out
35
to
inches.
1285.45 inches, and then the 135 inches added per the deed restrictions takes us to 1420.45.
Okay.
Okay, so in our notes here, it says 1430.
I don't know if somebody,
Okay.
probably me, made a math mistake, but.
So we're at
I think it's
1421.
1420. 85 plus 35 is 20. 120.
So you're adding the 1385 plus the 135?
Plus
1285
1285 plus the
plus
135.
135. Yeah, takes us to
1420.
1420. 1420.
Yeah, because
Small
I've got my
difference,
notes
but-
from the first hearing, it was 1209.5. Then you had the berm, which you said was 35, plus 135 from the deed restriction. So, I mean, at 1420?
Yeah, right, 1420.
All right,
Yeah.
so I think we can,
Okay, so we're at 1420.
yep.
And Andrea has the current plan with the berm on it, which at the bottom of that plan, it actually has a table, and it notes 1285.45. That's the plan
Oh, okay.
the revised plan we submitted.
Okay,
that's
so
there.
that's where the.
Yeah, just
okay.
add that number to the
So the difference was-
135, and we should be not
Mr.
confused.
Mr. Chairman,
Just want to make sure.
thank you for bringing it up. Mr. Chairman, as the maker of the motion, I am going to suggest that we replace the original number of 1385 with the 1420.5, because it is, number one, the more accurate number, and eliminate the need to go through a amendment to the amendment. to
Well,
the
and I think
motion
that's where the
process.
55% was off that number. Yep,
Okay,
so,
all right. And if
As the maker of the motion,
the maker of the motion,
he's amended his motion.
he's
I've
good.
amended my own
So,
motion.
that- yeah, okay.
Was that seconded?
So we have a second, so we have a,
Second.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion as amended? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Do you want to do a roll call?
Sure.
Okay. Fakih,
No.
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Giangrande,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes,
Gittleman.
I have to. I made
Motion passes 6-1.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, neighbor.
Very helpful.
Thank you. Good to see you. Come again when you can stay
So
longer.
we're calling item 2P, 1255, Desiak? You could come forward and state your name. Am I pronouncing the street name correctly?
I have no idea.
You have no
It's all
idea?
Desiak.
Okay, you're not French or? Desiak?
Have to disclose that there's arsenic.
So you can state your name and address and,
Todd Denike, 1255 Desiak Avenue, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan.
so if you could summarize for us why, what you need as a variance and why.
Yeah, so this property consists of 20 12-foot-long, 1x6 red cedar planks, 10 planks high for a total of 24 feet long. It averages roughly just under 6 feet tall. I measured it, the highest point was 5'8". It will be constructed of 3 4x4 posts sunk 3 feet deep in the ground with concrete to hold it in to prevent it from falling over. It will be located approximately 25 feet from the property line and 6 feet from my home. The boards and planks will have a 1-inch gap in between them. They'll be horizontal instead of vertical, as you can see in the picture there. The 2 posts furthest from the house will have 2 clematis plants growing up from the middle. I'm also using that 1-inch gap to help hang, different plants, and I was thinking we were going to do some vegetable garden, also some flowers and stuff, just to kind of really spruce up that area a little bit. The structure will also serve as a barrier from my neighbor and her barking dogs and loud voices from the adjoining neighbor where those big arborvitaes are. It'll also help, so when I have guests over, a lot of times her dogs will come outside and start barking. So this will also prevent her dogs from being able to see myself and my guests in my backyard, so giving us just a little bit more peace and quiet. I'm also proposing a second structure, the AC corral, which will consist of the same 1x6 red cedar planks. It will be laid out with the 1-inch gaps, just like in the main fence there. It'll be approximately 12 feet long, about 5 feet deep from the house out, and then 12 feet across. I'm going to use that extra storage space for all of my, furniture that I have out in the backyard. Keep that nice and neat during the winter time, and keep it so that the backyard is nice and clean. That's about it.
Okay, so the reason you want a 6-foot fence is for privacy? Is that what you're saying? So okay.
Privacy, and also to, make it more of a decorative wall as well, with being able to have our plants and stuff there.
So you'll find that 6-foot fences are sometimes difficult to achieve, but we'll discuss maybe that and get a few more questions in. So thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak on this? All right, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Anyone here that have questions? Go.
Yeah, so if I read this correctly, we were proposing that we put that also to basically cover or hide the air conditioner and that kind of stuff. Is that correct? You want to?
Yeah, well, yeah, let me clarify that as well. It's not going to be a 6-foot tall fence there. It's only going to end up being about 3.5 feet, just enough to cover the top of that AC unit so that I don't visibly look at it.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. I mean, because, okay. And then, is there a reason why we need to continue with the 6-foot fence? Normally, we look at 4-foot fences. Is there a reason why we couldn't do that?
Yeah, it was number one, to block out the noise from my neighbor. There also is a camera pointed on my property as well, that she's got one of those Ring doorbell things, and she can talk through it. So when she sees me out there, she starts chiming in on her thing, and it can be disruptive and kind of a nuisance to my guests that I have over. Kind of doesn't make me look very good, so that's why we went a little bit higher with it, just to give that extra privacy as well.
And does it have to be the construction that you're proposing? Do you have any other, are you open to suggestions from the board on other fencing alternatives that might fit in better?
Soften it?
Yes, soften
Make it less visible? Sure.
I also want to add in here, I do have 10 signatures here from neighbors in the neighborhood, one behind me, the people across the street from me, approving and saying that they like it and think that it's
Mr. Chairman?
aesthetically pleasing.
So I'm guessing that the arborvitae that we're seeing is insufficient to screen your patio?
Those are my neighbors,
Yes.
and yes,
So that would also mean that you're going to need to place some screening on the opposite side of the fence so that she can't see the fence.
which I've already done.
Okay.
I have that mesh screening that you can put up that kind of blocks visible.
No, I'm talking about
talking about
screening with evergreen.
Arborvitae.
Plantings, trees.
Planting more trees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've already, actually, as you can see here, I put a tree out in the front, and then I also added arborvitaes off to the left there
Well,
to kind of block me from her as well from the front of the house.
The ordinance generally requires that in the event the variance is granted, that it be blocked from public view, which would include her property. And that's where it comes from. So between the fence and her property, if the arborvitae is insufficient to screen her from seeing it, then you're going to have to add arborvitae so that she can't see it.
Now I see where.
Yeah.
If we can go to the next picture here, the one facing where the arborvitaes are. So there's the arborvitaes right there. If She's got about, I think, 10 or 12 of them right there, and those are really robust trees. They're huge. They're probably 3-4 feet in diameter, each one of those. She can't really see. She has to be looking directly onto my property, like at her fence, to be able to even see that fence.
So this becomes the more interesting question in my thinking, is that if those trees are sufficient so that she can't see your fence, they should be sufficient that she can't see your patio. But if they're not sufficient to see your patio, then I can understand the reason for the fencing. Because you don't need to provide the privacy, because the arborvitae that's already there is.
Except arborvitaes do not grow bushy towards the
I
bottom.
understand, so what we're gonna need to do is to probably still add some evergreen screening to the fencing that's being suggested, should it be approved.
Okay.
Yeah, and just also because you never know what happens to those trees. Let's say a new homeowner comes in, they decide to get rid of those, and now your fence is visible to them, and usually we like to have it screened, so it should be screened on your property.
And the ordinance requires that the screening be on your property. You can't utilize for all those reasons.
I do have a concern with putting trees right there. Those could kill her trees, my neighbor's trees as well, taking sunlight from them. So it could cause some sort of an issue. Maybe what I could do is, instead of putting them on the fence line itself, pull them back and put them on the opposite side of where the new fence is right now. Does that
On
make
the
sense?
back side of the
Yeah.
fence that's there?
Yep, kind of how, like, so I'm gonna have the clematises growing up through the middle where the posts are. I could do the arborvitaes on the back side of that to let those grow up nice and full.
That's what, a lot of people have done, is they put the screening right along
Alongside.
the
Yeah.
fence area.
Yep.
Fence, property line, don't know.
Yeah,
that it
as long as
matters
you
one
can't
way or
see
the
it,
other,
you can
just as long
place it anywhere
Yeah.
that blocks her view, so,
The issue is visibility.
yeah. So if you're good with that, then that's,
Yeah.
What would prevent, if you have to plant the screening, why wouldn't you just plant the screening instead of putting a fence there?
Because the fence was a little bit quicker to go up, as you know, that arborvitaes are quite expensive when you get upwards to the 6 to 8 foot range. And I don't have that kind of money to be able to afford to pay for, probably 10 to 12 different arborvitae trees that could go right there that would be 6 to 8 feet tall. I could get the 3 to 4 foot tall ones, which actually I'm gonna go pick some up
Well,
this
see,
weekend.
that's
That won't
another
work.
problem, because they have to be sufficiently high to block it at the time they're planted, not grow to a height that will block them after they're planted.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to be,
You really
At the
don't want a
height of the
6-foot-high fence.
yeah.
Yeah, this
I
is,
couldn't hear you.
Really, I don't think you really want a 6-foot-high fence, because that means you gotta get 6 foot at least high arborvitaes or some other thing that's going to cover that. If those huge, massive arborvitaes aren't enough to block the view for both of you, that's the only other thing I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the view, it's also my neighbor herself. There has been quite a few complaints from her towards me, which none of them have come to fruition. Nothing has ever happened. The biggest issue is I don't like being called names, and that's what she's been doing through this ring thing. Ever since I put that up, I have not heard a peep from her. So the fence did its purpose, and I would like to keep the fence as is so that it can prevent any further altercations with my neighbor.
So with her large arborvitaes, the ring must be somewhere positioned where,
It's pointing right onto my property, right over her overhang.
well, then you will have to screen that fence.
You're gonna have to
at the
screen it
height
then.
Of the fence.
I'm sorry,
You will have to
Screen
screen
it
it.
to the height of the fence.
To the height of the fence.
arborvitae will have to be 6 feet tall.
If you want
If
the
it's
fence.
approved.
If you want the fence, she cannot be able to see it.
So at a minimum, you're looking at putting evergreens, arborvitae at least 6 feet tall to screen the fence from view.
that screening is new to me. I haven't read that. I'm not familiar with that one. Ever since I got that letter from the township, it was saying 4 feet tall. Nobody ever told me anything about a screening of the fence, so I'm just really confused by that one. It's kind of throwing me for a curveball right now.
because usually it would only be 4 feet tall, not 6 feet tall. So because you're requesting for it to be 6 feet tall and requesting the variance, typically what this board says is, okay, you can have the 6-foot privacy fence, which usually we stay away from in Bloomfield Township because we don't like to see those barricades, if you will. So then we say, okay, you can have your 6-foot fence, but there has to be trees so that neighbors and other people maybe walking down the street can see this privacy fence. Instead, they see trees.
The fence is not visible from the street.
It's visible to her.
To the neighbor.
So it's got to be
It's public view, she's
public views, yeah. That's the standard in the ordinance.
Yeah, and then I've got, the other 10 neighbors that are in the area, one of which being directly behind me, that has approved it. He likes it, thinks it looks great.
Oh, he can see it?
You can see it. He's the only
Need
one
to
that can
screen it from his view, too.
physically see it without really looking for it.
Well, the next person who moves in is gonna wonder how it got there.
Right. Well, that's it too, yeah.
Yeah, because it can't create any injustice to the adjoining neighbors.
Right.
So that's what the whole screening is about, especially when you're having it at 6 feet.
Patty, if this was a standard 4-foot high, would we be discussing this?
Not in the rear yard, no.
Yeah, so that's the issue. That's why when they were talking about 4-foot fences, nobody talked about screening. Because if it had been a 4-foot fence, you wouldn't need to be here and we wouldn't be having the conversation.
The problem
It's the 6-foot request that requires the screening from public view, which includes the neighbor behind you, who loves it.
I understand your objection to that. The 6 foot tall, I'm above 4 feet tall myself.
I'm
If I stand up, my
simply-
neighbor
I'm-
will see me.
We're
and
trying
he will
to,
start
we're trying to help you
ridiculing me.
here.
We're the
so-
ones who were,
Just,
yeah.
so you could keep it if it's 4 feet, and maybe you could put like, a potted plant on top of it to,
Yeah, however you want to do
yeah,
it.
to make it a little more decorative. Would that maybe help block?
Have we
or-
had the public hearing on this yet?
It's not going to work.
Yeah, we have, because I said that. We have had the public hearing.
Wasn't really sure.
So I mean,
4 feet won't help me.
Does
Okay.
ivy considered like growing ivy, would that be
Well,
a screening?
ivy on the outside of it would be, but it's got to be,
Covering it at the
I'm not
fence.
aware of any place you can buy sufficient ivy to entirely cover the fence at the time you plant it.
right.
Well, if your fence is 4 feet and then you maybe have some cord where ivy grows across.
Oh, yeah, that's what I would do, if I was looking for 4 feet. But
So
see, I
we-
wouldn't need to worry about the screening.
So is anything that we've sort of suggested to you seem palatable? Because otherwise, you're probably going to have to take it down then. So that's unfortunately, if we can't screen it or we can't get it to 4 feet, then you're going to have to take it down, which I'm sure you don't want to do.
No, I don't. I mean, especially because there are other 6 foot tall fences in my neighborhood as well, in Ward's Orchard, that have been there since I've lived in Ward's Orchard.
We have to look at the facts that are in front of us, so.
I feel I get picked on a lot by my neighbor, and I'm having a real tough time with this, and I'm trying my best to keep distance. And this was one of my solutions, along with the arborvitaes in the front. Ever since that went in, the problem has been gone.
We're willing to help you with
Verbally
the,
accosted me. She's
Okay,
called me.
we can't-
This, yeah, I don't,
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
I can
You
understand the
don't-
reason that you feel you want the fence. We can't change the ordinance.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here today, is to get an approval for an appeal to the ordinance itself.
Right, we're saying your reason for the standard for practical difficulty is insufficient.
Now, I will be going down to Eastern Market this weekend, so I'll see if I can pick up some dirt cheap 6 foot tall arborvitaes and plant them right there and call it a day.
Because that's what we're going to save to approve it. And if you don't, then it's going to have to come down.
What's the time frame on that?
Be in the motion. but,
It'll be in the motion.
he's got sufficient time to get them in.
It's a good time to plant.
The motion becomes effective
30 days.
when the minutes are approved.
Correct.
And we could give them 30 days from now. You probably have maybe 60 days.
That's perfect.
I think-
Winter's coming.
it's a perfect time of year to
Can I-
plant
The
ours.
best
yeah.
time.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll
right.
make a motion.
All right,
I'll
very
make a
good.
motion.
Okay.
I think we've
I'd like to, with regard to the appeal at 1255, is it Desiax Avenue?
Works for me.
We couldn't get it, we're not sure.
For the height variance, I move the variance be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all standards for practical difficulty because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome. Due to the, it would prevent reasonable use of his property. There's no injustice to the adjoining neighbors by reason that it will be screened with evergreen plantings. Unique circumstances with the property have been demonstrated given the, the current existing layout, and it's not self-created due to that, the current configuration of the property. If approved, the motion must include application for all necessary permits to be made within 5 business days for this existing fence. Application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year for the proposed fence. Additional evergreen screening is required to screen the fence from public view, and the finished side of the fence must face the exterior. So I think it gives you time to add some screening.
Support.
So I have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. We'll see you at Eastern Market.
Get there early.
So item 1 has been postponed. We'll call item 2, 4424 Barchester Drive. You could state your name and address, the variance you're requesting, and why it's needed.
Corey Maxwell, 67965 Lennox Township, Haven Ridge, Michigan. I represent Exit Design Build. We're proposing a pergola on a customer's house at 4425 Barchester Road. It's 12 by 14 right off the edge of the house. We did take in consideration when doing this because we originally had a pool house designed which would have interfered with sites and everything from the neighbors. We proposed this because it's pretty much the same thing as Sam's Club. 12 by 14, we just thought this was more structurally sound, looked better, and more appealing to neighbors. It'll be all cedar, steel roof, brick columns, about 3 feet up at the sides, and that's about it.
Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Anyone here like to comment on this? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for discussion, motion, questions? It's just a permission request? Pergola?
I'll make a motion.
Yep, pergola.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the permission request in regards to the appeal at 4424 Barchester Drive for the proposed pergola. I move that the request be approved as submitted. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate compliance with Section 42-7.6 standards because the use of such an accessory structure is appropriate for the neighborhood. This is a common accessory structure. If approved, the motion also includes application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to installation.
Support?
Motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you, sir.
Calling item 3226 Norcliffe. State your name and address, your variance that you need, and why you need it.
Howard Artesian, 226 Norcliffe, and this is for a generator, and the ordinance requires that the generator be no more than 36 inches from the residential home itself. Whether it's in the side lot or the front or the back lot. This particular home is a site condo, and by its nature, the lot is a very unusual shaped lot, and this is exacerbated by the fact that there's so many windows. and you cannot put a generator in front of a functioning window because of the fumes that might get into the house. So basically, it's limited to that location is the least intrusive location, both for the neighbors there as well as across the street, around it and across the street. And there's a berm on that side, and the property to the north, directly adjacent to the generator, is the common areas for the association. So there is no house that you can see from, yep, from the north is directly to the top. And then if you go back to some of the other photos, you can see the berm right there where you can't even see the generator. And the other benefit too is it actually covers up the air conditioners that are in the back of the house too, which isn't required. But it does
And I would assume is
benefit.
that where all your utility hookups are, is in that
sorry,
side of the
I can't
house?
hear
Your utility hookups are on that side of the house, is that?
The electric is, I'm sorry, the gas is there, but not the electric.
Okay.
So the electric had to come from the other side of the house.
Okay.
But if you look at the house itself, you know, to the south is a driveway. There's windows. To the east, the same thing. There's a patio, not a patio, but a deck there that covers almost the entire back. And then
Got it.
there's windows.
Yeah.
And then the same thing in the
Yeah.
front and the side.
Okay, so the picture is very helpful because it is an unusual location because it's so close to the lot line. You're already, you know,
I know.
closer than the ordinance requires, and you're putting some in it. But
But in this
now-
particular case, because it's a,
Yeah, we got-
nothing's ever going to get built there.
Okay, any other questions from the board? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone here like to comment on this item? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion, if anyone.
Go right ahead. I think you should
Okay.
just keep going.
Let's just do
Take
this.
the rest of them for the rest of the night.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
But I'd like to motion to approve the dimensional variance in regards to the appeal at 226 Northcliffe Drive for the accessory structure of a generator, for existing generator encroaching into the northerly side setback. I move that the variance be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all standards for practical difficulty because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome because it would prevent the reasonable use of the property, being that there's windows and other locations where it would normally go. There's no injustice to the adjoining neighbors. For one, it is screened, and because of the orientation of the property as well. The unique circumstances with the property, the existing floor plan has limitations for where you could put a generator, and this is not self-created. If approved, the motion also includes application for all necessary permits must be made within 5 business days for the existing generator. I'm not sure if additional evergreens plants need to be required, but just to make sure that it is screened from public view, and that it looks like it is screened. So I'm not necessarily recommending additional screening in my motion.
Support.
So I have a motion and support. Any discussion?
Does the board want to consider screening for this unit?
I couldn't
Yeah,
amend mine.
I think, I didn't go out and see it. I can't tell, but typically with a generator,
I'll add
so-
that to the motion if I can still add. All right. I'll add additional evergreen may be required to screen the unit from public view,
Okay.
and that screening must exceed the height of the unit at the time of planting. So just make sure that the generator is screened from public view.
Absolutely. I was aware of that.
so we have a amended motion.
We have a second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. Your
Thank you
request is
very
granted. You'll be down at Eastern Market as well.
They have a field trip.
Yeah.
I knew being
Number
short
4, 7400 Parkstone.
Yes, my name is Emily Ream. I'm with Mosier Design Co. I'm representing Doug Fogel at 7400 Parkstone Lane. And this is for a permission variance in regards to a pool water feature wall. This decorative feature is in compliance, and the entire yard is screened by evergreens. And in addition to all the required setbacks of 16 feet, It's a simple request. Any questions?
How
I'd be
high
happy.
is it? Maybe I
It's
missed.
15 feet.
Why?
6 feet. Sorry,
High.
6 feet tall, 15 feet wide.
Okay. And what's it made of?
It's made out of
Any idea? It's very...
Lots of wood.
wood paneling and house stone.
Wood paneling and house stone, okay. Is there any screening that's planned?
Yeah, evergreens around the entire fenced-in yard.
Oh, okay. Any other questions from the board?
Look at that.
I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that'd like to speak on this? Close public hearing, bring it back to the board.
I can make a motion. With regard to the appeal at 7400 Parkstone Lane for the accessory structure waterfall, I move that the request be approved as submitted based on the information presented. The applicant did demonstrate compliance with section 42-7.6. Because the location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property due to the fact that it is well within the setbacks and is going to be fully screened with a fence and evergreens. I will also say that all of your permits for this waterfall have to be made within 1 year and obtained prior to installation. And while you have the evergreens in your plan, I'll just note that the waterfall has to continue to be screened 12 months out of the year with evergreens.
Okay.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Item 5, 1830 Marie Circle. So if you could state your name and address.
My name is John Jacoupy, 7851 Woodingham, West Bloomfield, Michigan. I am the designer and representing the homeowners, Tim and Julie Marks. We are here requesting a variance for removing an existing roof which happens to fall into the side setback, therefore making it non-conforming. And the reason we want to do this is the existing roof has a lot of problems and it's posing a lot of water damage in the inside of the house, and there's ice dams build up not year-round, but mostly in the winter, of course. And he does have an electrical wire along the edges of the roof, and it doesn't seem to be working.
No, I'm familiar with that. That's not good. You don't want that.
It's a seasonal thing with him repairing and painting drywall on the inside. We had a builder out looking at it, see if we could modify the roof, like build a new one over on top of it. But that doesn't seem to be very feasible because it's built with 2x6s and 2x4s, so it just increases the load that's coming down on the roof. So we just proposed replacing it with engineered trusses, and we're here seeking relief because it is in a setback, and it's an existing house, existing
Yeah, so
condition.
when I, thank you for that summary, discussed with the staff, it's unusual because the house is non-conforming. If you're just replacing the existing roof, you wouldn't be here, but you're changing the pitch of it, so therefore it's a change to the structure, and that's why we have to give you a variance. So, any other questions from everybody? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that'd like to comment on the roof? I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. In regard to the appeal at 1830 Marie Circle for the dimensional variance required for expanding an existing non-conforming structure, I move that this variance be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all the standards for practical difficulty because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome due to the current placement of the house on the lot. There's no injustice to adjoining neighbors, once again, because the house is currently there. It's simply a replacement. Unique circumstances with the property have been demonstrated given the location of the structure on the property, and it is not self-created. If approved, the motion must include application for all necessary permits to be made within 1 year and all permits to be obtained prior to construction.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Calling item 6, 3185 Franklin Road. State your name and address, the request for variance, and why it's needed.
Chris Zerbst, Motor City Landscaping, 301 Hacker, Rochester Hills. Requesting a variance for accessory structures in the front yard being illuminated pillars with a drive gate. I mean, pretty self-explanatory. The pillars are about 6 feet tall, and they want the pillars to have a illuminated entryway, as well as a means of access, controlling access.
The illumination's on the front.
Correct.
And you probably can't answer this, but the 6-foot piers and fence are generally higher than what we approve. Is there any, any reasoning behind the height for that, or
I think the only reason is that the
scale of the house, or aesthetics, or
yeah,
match?
that they based on what gates that they have
You looked at, they like those?
Yeah.
Okay.
The size of those.
Any other questions from the board?
Is there a gate there now?
No.
So because the gates are 6 feet, the fence has to be 6 feet, but because the gates are 6 feet, the piers have to be 6 feet. But if the gate was 4 feet, would the piers only need to be 4 feet?
I would say that, yeah.
I would agree.
Or if they were 5 feet, they could be 5 feet.
Well, the height of the piers is driven by the gate, and so the gate becomes the
Bigger
issue.
the gate, the bigger the pier to hold it up.
Yeah, so, and is there a specific while I understand the reason for the piers to get the gate, is there a specific reason for the gate to be that configuration?
You're kind of in a tough spot, because I don't know, you probably don't know the,
Yeah, not really, to my knowledge.
you'd be speculating.
Correct.
So let me open up the public hearing. Does anyone here like to speak on this? Close the public hearing, then? So we have a gate conundrum.
Are there any known security concerns for the reason for the gate?
So the ultimate goal for the future was they wanted to have a barrier along Franklin Road, continuous, but this is the first step to that, because of their dogs and kids playing out in the front yard, but we also tried to get permission to plant a hedge within the right-of-way, but the road commission denied that. This was part of that.
Is the gate higher than the fence?
Yeah.
That
Higher than the fence.
that image is just an example of what we're trying to do.
So there's no fence at the moment?
Correct.
So we're going to be putting up a
Well,
gate
actually,
attached to no fence?
there's an existing, like 2-rail wood fence in the right-of-way. It should be in one of the pictures.
Yeah, it was.
There it is, on the right.
Do we know how, the height of the existing, this fence here, is that 4 feet?
At max.
Yeah, that's
Probably less than
I do not know.
Speaking to my fellow board members, I'd like to know why the gate, and also I'd like to know what the plan is in terms of what's going to be hooked up to the gate
My initial, well, we've done,
We've done public hearing, so
my
we can
sense
chit-chat
is
here.
that I don't have enough information to approve it. And I'm not certain that we should automatically deny it, but my observations are that if the gate's where the fence is and the fence was denied because it was in the right-of-way, then the gates are gonna be denied because they're in the right-of-way. I take that back, the hedge was gonna be
Hedge,
denied
correct.
because it was in the right-of-way. There's currently a fence there. That fence obviously doesn't provide any significant security for the dogs. And the fact that this is a preliminary step towards a fence entirely across the Franklin Road frontage is problematic, because I would not automatically gamble on the fact that that's going to get approved, which would leave the gate standing out there in the middle of nowhere, protecting nothing. So I'm not sure at this point that we have enough information. But I also hate to postpone motions, so anybody?
So you're aware of the ordinances in terms of, if there are piers, how high they're supposed to be and all that other kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know, I don't want to be the one to give counsel to,
I think the best
We
thing
do
we can
that,
do
though.
is postpone.
But we've got to postpone with some direction to him, to go back to his client to say, hey, it's postponed and this is what we have to do. So what are we giving him?
My observation, I would like to see this postponed because I'm lacking the purpose and intent of the gate, which helps me consider any practical difficulty.
And I'd also say that in general, a 6-foot high pier and gate is larger than what we generally.
It's a considerable parcel, and the gates could be set back 20
Yep.
feet from the road. There's all
Yep.
sorts of things.
Yep.
But if it's for dogs and you're putting it at the perimeter, that's going to be another issue for us as well.
Yeah, so that would help too, if we kind of knew what the,
what the plan is.
With the
The
purpose.
master plan.
is it going to connect to a 4-foot fence? Is it going to connect to nothing?
So I motion that it be postponed
To the next meeting?
until, well, I guess my observation is until sufficient information can be made upon which we can consider, more properly consider the request.
Support.
Ooh, it's quick.
So we have a motion and
Motion.
support. Any discussion?
Yeah, so when you're going to have additional information, will have to come back into the township
Yep.
before you can
We will
consider
schedule.
whether to be on the
Correct.
schedule or not. Okay.
Correct.
So are you clear on our concerns? That you can take that back to them?
So the two main things are purpose and intent behind the gate, and
Yeah, why 6 feet? Would they take less than that? And what's it going to connect to?
why 6 feet, and what is the,
What's it
where
gonna
does fit
hook up
into
to
the
eventually?
plan?
All right, so we had a motion, support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's postponed till we get that information. Calling the next item. Item 7, 3472 Blossom. State your name and address, summarize the request for the variance, and explain why.
I'm Scott Cherneski, homeowner, 3472 Blossom Lane, along with my wife Carrie. We're in the process of finishing a major project with our house, remodeling it, upgrading the exterior, building a detached garage, and it's time to start thinking about our design of our rear yard. So we're proposing a patio, a rear terrace off the rear entry and side entry. They're highlighted in yellow, with the addition of a pergola, 12 foot by 12 foot by 10 foot on the terrace. In addition, between the two garages, the attached garage, the detached garage, and the side entry and the patio, it creates kind of a courtyard. We'd like to enclose that courtyard with a fence. Primary purpose is to give our dog a safe space to be, and close off the area to make a nice contained, safe area for our dog and a nice contained space for us to see, while maintaining a nice open space from the south end of the property to the north end of the property. And there's some pictures of the house. Our design also does include shielding with some giant arbs in the rear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 in the back, along with some pines on the north end on the right side of the picture to block the view of the pergola from the rear neighbors and the side neighbors.
Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this item? Close public hearing, bring it back to the board for any other questions of the applicant or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to the permission request and a request for a dimensional variance at 3472 Blossom Lane, I will deal with the permission request first and move that it be approved as submitted based on the information presented. The applicant has demonstrated compliance with section 42-7.6 standards. The use of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage, take that back. The location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property due to its configuration, its height, or its size, or its use. And I will then move that the the dimensional variance also be approved as requested based on the information presented. The applicant did demonstrate all of the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome because they do need to enclose this family area that they have off the back of the home, and it is not going to bring the dog close to the rear lot line. There is no injustice to adjoining neighbors. In fact, it seems to be pretty well thought out, and we have no reason to think anybody is in opposition. Unique circumstances with the property have been demonstrated again because of the configuration of the rear yard of the home. The addition of the pergola and trellis are well thought out and will enhance the value of the home and adjoining neighbors. Certainly, these are unique circumstances that we always want to take into consideration with any property in trying to enhance value, which is also not self-created. Again, the need for the privacy area for the containment area for the dog. With that having been said, application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to commencing construction.
Support. Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you.
Item 8, 6020 Darramore. State your name and address.
Jacob Lubig, 29454 Haas Road, Wixom, Michigan, presenting a Ventures Design and Build. We got 1 permission request today for an in-ground pool and 2 dimensional variances, 1 for the pool equipment and 1 for the fence. This is actually a very difficult design to put together for us, given the unique lot layout, to keep all the major elements conforming to the setbacks in the ordinances. I do believe that we are facing a practical difficulty in that the principal structure is non-conforming to the 16-foot side yard setback. It's only 12.5 feet to the side lot line. The ordinance says pool equipment can be in the side yard if it's immediately adjacent to the house, outside of the setback, and properly screened. We're going to make sure it's as close as possible to the house and screened with evergreens. There's already a decent amount of screening on the south side of the property towards the neighbors. And they also have given us approval in an email that I sent over. As far as the fence, I think there's a practical difficulty in that the lot is made up of over 75% front yard and secondary front yard, because the home sits so far in that southwest corner of the lot, opposite to the intersection of Old Orchard and Darramore. You can argue that the lot is currently fenced in by the trees around the perimeter of the lot because, you know, it's pretty much screened in all angles. You wouldn't be able to see the proposed fence from the Old Orchard Street just because of all the greenery that's existing right there. I don't think it would create any new site restrictions or barrier restrictions or anything like that. The homeowners would like to have what's left of their green space after the pool for like the dog to be able to run around. We also received emails from the neighbor to the west. He had no problem with the fence.
Okay, any questions from the board? Open the public
Fence
hearing.
need to be screened. I mean, is there any screening with the fence? Or are you just relying on the exterior screening?
We could add screening to the fence if it's
Just curious.
that's something that, you know,
All right.
would get this approved. He mentioned something about adding a line of arborvitaes around the garage area, so everything from pretty much every property wouldn't be able to see this fence.
It looks pretty.
Anyone, open the public hearing. Would you like to speak on this item? Come up and state your name and address and give us your feedback. Yep, right up there.
My name is Suzie Sills, 6060 Braymore, in the Brays of Bloomfield. I can't really see from the description, but my concern is about the fence in the front yard. I've lived in this neighborhood close to 40 years, and one of the interesting things and characteristics about the neighborhood is not having fences visible. So the ordinance says it can be in a side yard or a backyard, but it looks like they're proposing this 4-foot fence in a front yard. And once somebody gets that variance, then it's a concern that other people will come in and try to disturb the characteristic of the neighborhood. So I'm not sure why they can't just do it with their evergreens, or what, you know, how critical is this for them to ask for variance for a front yard fence?
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak? I'll close the public hearing if you could respond to the
Well, I would
public comment.
argue, like, yeah, you don't want to set a precedent for fences in a front yard, but it is a secondary front yard for a corner lot. I think on one of the overheads, you see that the lot line actually ends 20 feet before the street in both directions. So it won't be going, you know, completely up to the street, and there's quite a bit of like wooded area right there. So everything will be behind the driveway. It's not going to be visible from either of the two streets on the intersection. It's just kind of a technicality that it's called the secondary front yard. It's only because it's a corner lot. So.
I live on a corner lot.
Okay.
Still a front yard.
And the purpose of the fence was?
With the new pool going in, it's just, it's such a limited space of like, you know, grass and greenery. It's just, they have dogs there. They just want to be able to enclose and let the dogs run around.
But was that also?
And the fence for the pools is.
I was just, so it was also intended to be a safety fence?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we could put in a fence closer to the pool to serve that purpose, right? Without expanding it out to the lot line?
Yeah.
We were not informed of the fact that this is intending to be a dog fence. So that is new to the application.
Okay, so.
It's ultimately a 4-foot aluminum pool fence. It's used as a barricade. But it's dual purpose, I guess, for, you know, the dog.
So what?
Have to be re-noticed then, if the intention of the fencing is for dog containment? You'd have to comply with the dog containment provisions, which is not on the lot line.
Gotcha.
You know, obviously, you know, we require fences for safety around pools. So if it was relatively close to the perimeter of the pool to serve that purpose,
yeah,
that would be great. But as was stated, you know, using it as a dog fence as well, that's a different discussion.
So if the board wants to take action on the other items.
Yeah, dual
other than
frontage
fence.
properties present a unique situation for any homeowner, because instead of having side yard setbacks, you have 2 sets of front yard setbacks, which severely limits the ability of anybody to do anything with their property. And if I remember correctly, if this was if either of the frontages were a standard side yard, there would only be a 16-foot setback. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep.
But because it's a front yard, it's a 40-yard setback. And because you got 2 of them, that creates
Small envelope,
that creates a very small envelope within which to put a pool put a fence and allow a dog someplace to run that doesn't already have concrete or water on it. So it's an interesting problem, but I understand that in considering this for dog containment, there's an additional set of issues that come into play because you can't have a dog containment fence in the front yard either, of which we have 2. Not 2 dogs, 2 front yards. So it's, yeah. Motion for renotice, would set this aside to be renoticed?
If
What do
you want to
us
take
do?
action on the other 2 items, you could do that, and they could come back at another time and address the fence, which we would notice accordingly.
Okay. Which would, so then we'd be dealing with the pool and the spa.
And the spa, yep.
And the pool equipment.
Yeah. Which is only a dimension, is only a, well, there would still be both. Permission request for pool and spa, dimensional variance for the proposed pool equipment.
Right.
Is he going to need a fence around the pool?
Yeah, he will.
Yeah. Okay, but at least he knows he's got those 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Really quick, I did notice on the, let's see, that's saying it was encroaching 7 feet. It's actually 7 feet from the property line, which means it would be a 9-foot encroachment. I just want to make sure that everything's
Clear.
clear, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, got both of them again. Okay, Mr. Chairman, with regard to the request for a dimensional variance and a permission request at 6020 Darramore, I am going to move on the 2 permission requests for the pool and spa, that they be approved as submitted. Based on the information presented, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with section 42-7.6 standards. The location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property because of its location or its intended use. With that having been said, for the dimensional variance, which is the location of the pool equipment in the side yard setback, I am going to move that it also be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant has demonstrated all the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome. It needs to be in close proximity to the pool to maintain its efficiency. There does not appear to be any injustice to adjoining neighbors, at least as we have heard. Unique circumstances with the property are not in this situation, the 2 front yards, but in fact, that we have the pool, we need a location to put the pool, and we have a house that's already on the property and limited space where it can be put, all of which is not self-created. With that having been said, application for permits for the pool and spa must be obtained prior to construction. Additional evergreen screening is likely to be required, especially for the pool equipment, but I am going to kind of set that aside at least. Now, you know what, I'm going to leave them in there, and they'll be taken into consideration when we deal with the fence.
Makes sense?
Yep.
Support.
So motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And, well,
Now we gotta postpone.
and I'm going to move that we postpone the request for the dimensional variance on the fence.
Support.
Because it has to be renoticed.
Has to be renoticed, yep.
So motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's postponed, and it'll be renoticed to include the fact that it'll also be dog containment. Thank you very much. On the next item. 1916 Devonshire.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Werbling. I reside at 1916 Devonshire Road with my wife, Jennifer Werbling, and our 2 children, with a newborn that was just arrived May of this year. We're attempting to build an additional family room to the existing family room, but we're requesting a variance because unfortunately it's encroaching on that 4-foot it's encroaching 4 feet into the required 16-foot southerly side yard setback. But if we can proceed with the project, it's actually going to be lined up with the existing first floor family room. It's on that same line. There's also that small deck, which that's actually where the construction potentially would take place, which is in the same property line. It basically would be replacing that small wooden deck that you see there. And we would be taking down that little terrace, I believe is what it's called. So it wouldn't be encroaching any further closer to 1932 Devonshire, which you see there with the gray brick facade. We would also be planting pine trees to ensure privacy, to safeguard the privacy with our neighbor, to protect their property rights as well as ours. And it would probably be, it's about a 206 square foot room, first floor level. It will go about 16 feet, which is about the size of that deck right there. It'll be basically replacing that deck, but it's for the, because of the setback, which was, it's going to be on the same pre-existing property line where we have to request the variance.
Thanks very much. Any questions from the board? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone like to comment on this? Close the public hearing, bring it back. Pretty simple request. Any discussion, motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion here. With regard to the appeal at 1960 Devonshire Road for the dimensional variance for expanding an existing non-conforming structure and encroaching into the required setback, I move that it be approved as submitted. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all of the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome because of the way that the house is currently situated near the lot line. There is no injustice to the adjoining neighbor because there will not be any additional encroachment. The unique circumstances of the property have been demonstrated, again, given the placement of the home, and none of this is self-created due to the reasons stated above. All application for necessary permits must be made within 1 year and should be obtained prior to construction.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you very much.
So item 10 was postponed. So we'll go to item 11, 2664 McClintock.
Hi, I'm Ann Bardis. I live at 2664 McClintock with my husband Todd. And we're seeking a variance for a pergola. And you can see.
And it's, how high is it?
It is 12 feet.
12 feet high? Okay.
10 by 12, excuse me. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
So we got some letters that people indicated that they're not able to view it from public view, so I just
Yes.
want to confirm that that's correct. Okay, thank you.
And is it going to be 16 feet off the property line?
I believe so, yes.
It's going to be on, looks like it'll be on their deck, right by.
It's existing.
It's existing.
That's
It's
it,
there.
it's already there.
These
We
are,
didn't know because
these are,
it's
that's
portable.
okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
so, sorry. Yeah,
no problem. Let me open the public hearing. Does anyone here like to speak on this item? Close the public hearing.
I can make a motion.
That'd be great.
In regard to the appeal at 2664 McClintock Road, for the accessory structure, I move the request be approved as submitted. Based on information presented, the applicant did demonstrate compliance with section 42-7.6 standards. The location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of the property due to the fact that it's now within the setbacks of the property. If approved, the motion must include the application for all necessary permits must be made within 5 business days for the existing pergola.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. We'll go to the next item, item 12, 2745 Middlebury. Middlebury.
Good evening. My name is Tom Schneider, and I reside at 2745 Middlebury Lane. I'm the homeowner with my wife. We are in the midst of a number of renovations. We've owned the house for 7 years and have done the inside and now proceeding with the outside. And as we started our renovations, we thought of the challenges that we all had over the last couple of years and would like to try and cover the back patio to provide more coverage throughout the year. It's a covered, basically a pergola lean-to off the back of the house on the back patio. It's within the existing easements from the property line. There's tree coverage along our neighbors to the west. It's out of sight line, and we'd hope to be able to have this approved.
Thanks very much. Any questions from the board? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone here like to speak on this? Could step forward and give your name and address.
My name is Mike Smith, 3571 Berkshire Drive, and I represent the Westchester Village Homeowners Association Architectural Control Committee. And we did receive an application for this project, which we did review, and we did approve it, and we have no objections to it.
Thanks for that comment, and make sure that the association compensates you for the time that you've been here tonight and the patience.
Absolutely.
Maybe you'll get a small gift basket at the holidays. Something. All right. Anyone else like to speak? We'll close public hearing. I don't know that you don't really need to respond to that. That was positive, so I'll take it
I
back.
forgot to include that we did make application to the homeowners association.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience. So,
Mr. Chair, I'll take this motion.
there we go.
With regard to the appeal at 2745 Middlebury for the permission request required for the proposed pergola accessory structure, I move the request be approved as submitted based on the information presented. The applicant did demonstrate compliance with section 42-7.6 standards because the location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property. If approved, the motion must include application for all necessary permits to be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to construction.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Well, the next item, 860 Hidden Pine.
Hi, my name is Leah Zhang. I live at 860 Hidden Pine. So we're seeking a variance.
Hey, if you could step outside and celebrate.
We're seeking a variance to replace an existing pool fence in our backyard. The issue is that because our backyard is bordered on Long Lake, it's considered a front yard, so we were told by the township that it had to be 3 feet if it's considered a front yard. We have a 4-foot fence currently, but it's in such a state of disrepair. We just moved in a year ago. There's been so many dead trees that damaged like whole sections of the fence. So we were told by the township initially try to repair it, but it's just, there's just huge gaps in it all over it. So it's a safety issue for the pool. So we just want to replace the old fence with a new one.
Thanks very much. Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this item? Close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion here for the dimensional variance at 860 Hidden Pine Road. I move that the variance be approved as requested based on the information presented. The applicant did demonstrate all the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome because they have a failing fence that is there now and needs to be replaced. There is no injustice to the adjoining neighbor by reason of the fact that the fence already exists and actually will probably be better for the neighbor. It'll be a new and better looking fence. Unique circumstances with the property have been demonstrated, again, given the fact that it's located on Long Lake and has this existing fence, and none of these things are self-created. All applications for necessary permits should be made within 1 year and obtained prior to construction.
Thank you.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you.
Calling the next item. Item 14, 1140 Park Place Court.
Hello, my name is Jordan Phillips, 3615 Rockingham Road, Royal Oak. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Chinsky at 1140 Park Place. This is for a generator in a condo. There really was no place to put it on this property that would satisfy the 16-foot setback. We'd originally planned to put it in the back corner of the house by the gas meter, simply because gas piping is cheaper than SE cable right now. Mr. Chinsky had contacted his neighbor himself and asked his opinion on the matter, to which his neighbor said he wanted it up front. So Mr. Chinsky had made the decision to just move it there, even though it was a more costly installation, just to appease his neighbor. He's gotten HOA approval. Everyone seems to be happy with it, and we'd like to get him a generator so he can have some power and doesn't have to suffer like he did 2 weeks ago.
Thanks very much. Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Anyone here like to speak on this item? I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the dimensional variance in regards to the appeal at 1140 Park Place for a generator. I move that the variance be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all standards for practical difficulty. Because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome, because it would prevent the reasonable use of the property. And everyone does need a generator these days, especially what happened just a couple weeks ago. There will be no injustice to the adjoining neighbor. Actually, they made some accommodations and actually incurred some additional expense to accommodate the adjoining neighbor. The unique circumstances of the property, again, it's very limited. The limited available space for such a generator, and because of that, it is not self-created. So if approved, the motion also includes application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to installation. And, ooh, it's really tight, isn't it? I'm thinking of additional evergreens, but we do want generators to be screened, so I will put that in the motion, that evergreen plantings must be required to screen the generator from public view and must meet or exceed the height of the unit at the time of planting.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Item 15-7455 Parkstone.
Good evening. My name's Joe Wilson with Wilson Design Associates here on behalf of the Kaiser residents located at 7455 Parkstone Lane. Since it's well past an hour past my bedtime, I'll be as concise and as
Much appreciated.
So, what's that?
I said that's much appreciated.
We're here asking for 3 items, 2 permission requests and 1 variance. The first permission request would be an off-the-shelf pre-made prefabbed swim spa that measures 19 by 8 by 5 feet high. I'd like to see this partially recessed so it lessens the visual impact from any views, including inside the house. Second permission request would be a cedar pergola, 20 by 12 by 10 foot high, similar in that in character. I would have stone or brick to match the house for the piers or the columns. The variance would come for the 4-foot black aluminum fencing for the swim spa as well as the dog. We comply on the north property line, the east property line, and of course the west property line, where we're asking for our variance is on the south property line. We did landscape that fencing. The north property line and the east property line have really pretty sufficient existing vegetative cover in our opinion. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Does anyone would like to speak on this item? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, with regard to the permission request and request for dimensional variance, at 7455 Parkstone Lane. I am going to move that the permission request be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate compliance with section 42-7.6 standards. The location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property due to either the location or the use. And then further, with regard to the dimensional variance, I am going to move that it also be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all of the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome, and in fact, the architectural information provided is quite attractive, and I think will add value to the adjacent homeowners as well as the existing homeowner. There is no injustice to the adjoining neighbors for the reason I just stated. Unique circumstances of the property have been demonstrated. In order to have this utility in the backyard, you do need to have it properly fenced. And of course, we are in compliance on two sides, needing a little bit more space for the use of the rear yard, requiring it to encroach on the rear, the southerly side yard setback. And this is not self-created. Again, it's simply the configuration of the lot and the need for utility, which is never self-created. If this motion is approved, application for all permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits obtained prior to commencing construction.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Next item, 299 Orange Lake Road.
Hello, my name is Christina Del Pizzo, and I reside at 299 Orange Lake Road. I'm seeking approval for a black aluminum fence that is located on the south side in the front yard, all the way to the back. I have been approved for a licensed home child care that will be located in our basement by the Design Review Board. One of the contingencies of that is that I need a fenced-in backyard. Due to utilities, the best egress door wall, like the best location for an egress door wall would be on the south side of the home. And it also has the most tree coverage to hide the fence. We thought that would be the best location.
Thanks very much. Any questions from the board? I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak? You state your name and address.
Hello, everyone. Daniel Ackerman, 285 West Hickory Grove Road. I'm I believe, the only house that can actually directly see 299 Orange Lake. I'm 285 right there on the corner to the right. And I'm in full approval. I think that this fence is necessary, and honestly, I think it would be a great addition to the neighborhood. So with that, I just want to sort of express that. Nothing more but full approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say that both of you have a very high amount of energy given us. That's particularly good for someone that's running a daycare. Good for you. So I'll bring it back to the board now for discussion or a motion.
We need your energy.
Push to the finish line. We can do it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Does this have multiple frontages or just, no, it does not, does it?
It's a corner lot.
It is a corner lot? Okay, I couldn't tell. All right, I'll go for it. I'm going to see if I can take some of their energy.
Yep.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the dimensional variance in regard to the appeal at 299 Orange Lake Drive for a proposed fence. I move that the variance be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all standards for practical difficulty because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome. It would actually prevent her from actually running, which is so much needed now, a child care center. There's no injustice to adjoining neighbors. Actually, we have support from the neighbor here, as well as looks like there's a lot of screening there. The unique circumstances of the property has multiple frontages, and so that is also a unique circumstance. And because of that, it is not self-created. So if approved, the motion also includes application for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to construction. And it looks like you have pretty good screening, but I am going to put that in just to make sure that there may require additional evergreen screening to screen the fence from public view.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted. Calling the next item, 7225 Losser Road, home of the Marion Mustangs.
Marion Mustangs, yeah. Spelled Marion wrong.
I noticed that.
I went to Ladywood, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm the
M-A-R-I-A-N.
Facilities director going on 22 years here of Marion High School.
Yeah, and you have a low energy level. I can see those.
I do. Anyways, we've won multiple championships. And that red dot on to the left, it's a shed. There's already a shed there. And on that right lower picture, there's a shed there. You see our Marion Mustang fence and dugout. That's a softball diamond. Just to that right of that dugout is our old shed, and I want to put a new one there. And
are you increasing the footprint at all?
I drug that field just to take. I drug that field to take that picture. There was some grass growing in it, and but anyways, my shed is a little bit bigger than that one, and shoot, I wanted Tough Shed to just pull that out of there and stick a new one in real quick without you guys knowing it, but
I think it's against the Marion Honor Code.
Nobody would comply with my request.
I think you'd serve a detention.
So, anyways, but so I request a new shed.
It's going to be 9 by 8 by 12?
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Okay. Any questions from the board? Open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for...
Mr. Chair, I can make a motion.
Sure, go right ahead.
In regards to the appeal at 7225 Losser Road, for the accessory shed structure, I move the request be approved as submitted. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate compliance with section 42-7.6 standards. Location of the accessory structure will not hinder or discourage the adjacent use of property due to the fact that it's so far from the property lines, and it looks like you could use a new shed.
Yeah.
Been there a long time.
All right, thank you.
If approved, the motion must include application for all necessary permits made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to installation. Additional evergreen screening may be required to screen the shed from public view.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you.
Next item, item 18, 3580 West Maple.
Good evening, or good night at this point in time. Bob with Allied Signs, 33650 Giftos Drive, Clinton Township, here representing Henry Ford Health Urgent Care, located at 3580 West Maple Road. We are requesting a variance for a setback for a 21 square foot monument sign at 7 foot from the property line. The ordinance does require a 25-foot setback, but that would take us in the middle of their parking lot. There was an existing sign there from the old tenant, I believe a PNC Bank, which had a similar monument sign there, had 0 setback. We're requesting to be 7 foot setback from the property line.
Very succinct, thank you. Any questions from the board?
How is this going to be illuminated?
Internally,
It'll light up.
yes, just the lettering will.
You know, the only sad thing about the location is that if I was injured, I could walk to it, but if I was injured, I couldn't walk. So I just live across the street. So, yeah.
Well, it depends on your injury.
Well, that's
Huh?
true. I hadn't thought about that.
You could have,
There's 911.
with the talents you have and the things you like to do, you can injure any number of things. So I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this? Okay. State your name and address.
Good evening. Timing is everything.
Oh, that's Kathy. Whoa. Yeah, because usually you're at the start.
Kathy.
You're way out of sequence.
I'm way out of sequence, I know. Representing Bloomfield Village Association, 3595 Bradway. This came before our board in August. We did approve it with a recommendation for the variance. Our approval did require that the landscape bed that the sign will be located in be mostly full of plantings, and those plantings had to be maintained in healthy condition and should add color during the summer, so they shouldn't be just evergreens. Thank you.
Or just bark.
I'm sorry?
Or just bark.
Not just a mulch bed.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
Anyone else like to speak? I'll close the public hearing. Would you like to respond to the public comment?
I believe that was noted at the meeting I attended from the owners, or the planning commission, and it was noted in the minutes of the meeting. So I'm sure Henry Ford will comply with the requesting for shrubbery and greenery.
Gotcha, okay. Bring it back to the board now for a motion.
I'll take this one. With regard to the dimensional variance at 3580 Maple Road for a proposed ground sign encroaching into the required 25-foot setback. I approve that this motion be approved as requested. Based on the information presented, the applicant did demonstrate all the standards for practical difficulty. Compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome due to the location of the parking lot and the sign. There is no injustice to adjoining neighbors by reason that it will be landscaped with not only evergreen plantings but other florals that will bloom in the summer. The unique circumstance of the properties has been demonstrated given the existing location of the sign bed and is not self-created due to the fact that the sign bed is existing. So, with that being said, if approved, the motion must include application for all necessary permits to be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to installation. Low-lying landscaping shall be required around the base of the sign.
Support.
Motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, your
Thank
request
you.
is granted. We are
Last but not least.
thrilled to call the last item.
Aww. Okay, but anyway.
Start coming later.
I'm from Northern Sign. My address is 934 Cedar Gate Court in Waterford. And I'm requesting an illuminated suspended blade sign that would go inside of the store, inside of the cookies. But you can see it, so that's
The window
why-
sign.
The window, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? I'll open the public hearing. Are any of the two people in the room want to make any comment? Close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion for the crumble cookie sign. Logo variance with the happy-looking baker.
All right, I'll go for it. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the dimensional variance in regards to the appeal at 4036 Telegraph Road for a secondary sign within the window exceeding 5% of the sign area, the image, actually. I move that the variance be approved as requested based on the information presented. The applicant did demonstrate all standards for practical difficulty because compliance with the strict letter of the ordinance would be unduly burdensome because anything smaller probably wouldn't be visible. and I think that is important for a business. There's no injustice to the adjoining neighbors because this is going to actually be on inside in the window. The unique circumstances of the property, I will say that a cookie business, and especially when you have multiple retail outlets, that you want something unique. And so I think that that is also something. And this is not self-created. So with that said, all applications for all necessary permits must be made within 1 year, and all permits must be obtained prior to installation.
Support. I have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, your request is granted.
Thank you, and thanks for hanging in there for me.
Well, we've had longer meetings, but,
Yes.
Right, you're getting off early.
Run away.
so do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
They might, wait, you,
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Uh-oh, did we miss someone?
well, this gentleman's curious about something.
Okay.
Yeah, I was, there was a complaint filed about a butter kit. I had to file an ADA application, and then I had a variance based on the restrictions that
it's not
didn't show up
tea, it's
today. Everything was turned in last month, and I just kind of wanted to know if I had been approved, if I wasn't, do I have to get rid of it, can I keep it, can I just keep it?
Talking about a fire pit.
I have no idea.
For $26.40, I have the receipt of the fine that I paid telling me I had to be here.
Aw, you sat here all this time?
You sat here all this time?
Aw.
I mean, I love the drama.
You and G found it entertaining?
You know, normally we charge for people just to sit through and listen to the material, but
We did that, though, we'd have to allow them to buy popcorn.
revenue enhancement for snacks for us, or for the end-of-year party. What about that great end-of-year party we're gonna get from?
Mr. Chair, you can plan anything you'd like.
Can I?
Ah.
Well, do I have a budget, or?